Well, good afternoon, Mr. President, and thank you so much for being with us for this third Ask Our Expert online conversation. It's not often that we have a head of state as an expert, so we are immensely proud to have you with us and most grateful to you. Our topic today is quantum leadership in times of pandemic. Quantum behavior is something you've been studying as a theoretical physicist and practicing as a head of state. I recall that you presented this intriguing idea at the Summit of Minds in Chamonix in September 2018. It was picked up by John Thornhill, the innovation editor of the Financial Times, who was also in Chamonix. He immediately wrote an article about it, and then the expression became viral. By quantum politics, you meant that the classical world of post-Newtonian physics, linear, predictable, even deterministic to some extent, had come to an end and was being replaced by the quantum world, highly uncertain and interconnected, incredibly complex, and also changing depending on the position of the observer. You are going to speak first for about 15-20 minutes, after which we'll open the conversation with our guests. So during these 15-20 minutes, apart from telling us, of course, a bit more about the notion of quantum politics and leadership, we'd like you to share with us three things, if we may. First, some insights that stem from the many conversations you're having with national leaders and heads of international organizations. Second, your views on how the current pandemic crisis crystallizes the issue of quantum leadership. And third, your take on the accusations of failure of leadership in the current crisis that are very often seen in the printed and social media. Mr. President,
you mean worldwide?
Yeah,
not in Armenia.
Yeah, worldwide.
So we start hearing?
Yes, please, Mr. President.
And then at the end there'll be questions and answers, am I right?
That's right. After 20 minutes or so, there'll be a
Because I have a notebook to write the questions in order to answer them. I just want to show you the notebook.
Oh, wonderful. Summit of Minds.
That's the Summit of Minds in Armenia. So I take this opportunity to invite all of our friends and colleagues to the next Summit of Minds in Armenia, which unfortunately we have postponed it to autumn. Thierry knows about that. Autumn is also as beautiful as early summer in Armenia, so I'll be hoping that we will be towards sort of an end of coronavirus and you will be able to travel. Otherwise, I am determined that we will do it in a different form. Maybe we do that Summit of Minds this form. Why not? I think this is a new world and we have to live with the new rules of the new world. Now, I'm not ill, don't worry. And the virus cannot travel virtually. So, yes, the world has changed. And I think somehow we have started noticing that because of the virus. Some people say that this is a new, more aggressive, the behavior is different. Sure, that the new virus is a new virus, and viruses are inhabitants of this planet with us. Somehow we are two species, among others, fighting for survival, and for them, their behavior is quite explainable why they are there, why they are mutating, why they are changing in order to survive, like we are doing, to survive. But what's different this time? It's not that the virus is different. Definitely, it is different virus, maybe a bit more aggressive, maybe a bit quicker, maybe a bit more dangerous than the previous ones. But what is changing and what has changed in reality is the world. Because if you look back, pandemics were present on this planet. Even if we go back 2,000 years, there were records, historic records that the pandemics were there. Sometimes these pandemics were lasting not years, not tens of years, decades, but even hundreds of years. majority of these pandemics were bacteria-based, and then eventually there were also some that were related to viruses, but the bacteria-based was connected with hygiene. And of course, we found overall a solution to survive nicely with bacteria when we found how they work, and we found antibiotics. Probably, hopefully, in the near future, we will be in a situation to find a general solution for how we can survive with viruses without making them so dangerous in this or that form. But what has changed clearly is the world, that this world is much more interconnected, we're much more interlinked, much more fast. And this is my observation, or observation of some other people as well, that classical ways of development of this world, and specifically the classical behavior of global risks, has changed, and it has more and more the form of quantum behavior. First of all, this is a world of at least around 10 billion or a bit more or a bit less of inhabitants. Each of us, you can look at that as a particle, a very sophisticated and complicated particle. But we are interlinked, and each of us has several features, like every elementary particle. And the part of these features are mechanical, or they are material, starting who we are, our biological situation, our health situation, our temperature, and so on. The other sides are virtual, and probably half of our life is already virtual. In our virtual life, we have started traveling with the speed of light, interacting with speed of light, and having completely new environment of relations. And we can see that how it's changing the way we exercise politics, the way we exercise entertainment, and how entertainment and politics are merging more and more. They were always sort of very close relatives to each other. There was always entertainment related, even in Egypt or in old Rome. But today is different. It's going to be a merger of that. The way we exercise to deliver the messages to people, that's another aspect of what's happening. And this world has become fast, quick, and in many ways a quantum in its behavior. Let's look at what was the world before the coronavirus. I think it's amazing. There were millions of people traveling all over the world. And of course, if you go back another 30, 40, 50 years ago, 100 years ago or 200 years ago, I think these viruses or pandemics were moving with the speed of transportation, of logistics of those times. I mean, that was maximum the speed of a horse, going from one part of the world to the other. And now it's different. I think the first case of a virus could be in China. The next one, eventually you get somewhere in Europe, like in Italy or Spain, and then the United States. So you don't have a classical path of this risk traveling worldwide. It's not only the pandemic or health risks that have quantum behavior. The quantum behavior is also the same is happening with the financial world. Well, Thierry, you used to work for an international bank. See what's happening with the stock markets today. And this is something that looked like a bit emotional, maybe. Information that was created somewhere in the world has huge impact on stock markets worldwide and on the economy as well. Look what's happening with the threats that we are facing in this world. Terrorism, one of them, also has a quantum behavior, because no longer terrorism is an organized group of red brigades somewhere, let's say in Europe, in the south of Europe, and they are organized group. They come together, they share an ideology, which is basically discussed by them or delivered through the press. But there are a group of people, and if they want to do a terrorist act, they have to move very classically. They get together on an idea, they get together, they're organized, they terrorist act doesn't need meeting people each other. Your idea should not be here and there. That idea could be absolutely virtual, and if there is a recipient, a particle that is ready to receive that idea, then that particle definitely will act, and will act completely independently in an unknown space and time, maybe somewhere in the European state, or maybe in America, maybe somewhere else, but you cannot predict where it will be happening because it is absolutely quantum, the behavior. The person is ready to absorb the ideas, that this could be religious extreme ideas or extreme other ideas, and in order to start or design a terrorist act, you don't need an organization. It can be individual or 2-3 people together, and everything happens very quickly, unexpected. You can get all the necessary information on the web, how to do it, and this is what we see today. So many of our behaviors are absolutely quantum, and in many ways people act quantumly, and in not only the risks are quantum, but also the developments of the economy, political life are quantum. That's why in many places we see acts when unpredictable acts of politics, where a candidate that was literally unknown, or someone that people never would believe that candidate will win an election, the candidate wins the election because of many factors, and some of these factors are absolutely quantum, including the relations or communication between the candidate and the people. I always feel comfortable bringing my own country's example, because it's my own country. 2 years ago, exactly more or less 2 years ago, when after my inauguration as the President of the Republic, we had a revolution in Armenia, which happened in 2 weeks. I mean, the environment was there. There was a critical mass of unhappiness of people, but nobody was predicting that there'll be a revolution. A revolution started with just a couple of young people who were walking from the north of the country to the capital, and with specific slogan, which was a quantum slogan in a sense that was targeting exactly what the public opinion was there. And in a couple of weeks' time, what we had, 10 people became 10,000, then it became 100,000, 200,000, and we had a revolution, and completely unexpected one. Then we have seen this in many countries, including in Eastern Europe, from Ukraine, you go to Europe, you go to States and elsewhere. The world has changed, and pandemic is something that will probably will accelerate this transition from classical world to the quantum world. And I think this world definitely will not be the same that it was before the pandemic and after it. Well, the pandemic probably will last several months, or maybe a year and a half, until we'll not find a vaccine, or maybe it will come with another wave because it's quantum. Nobody can guarantee that it will not restart in China, although they are shown that quite an organization. But the world will be different. Although there's always a question mark, a big question mark, because we are human. In our brain, in our computer inside us, we have this fantastic key, which is called delete. So we have this human quality of forgetting things. So the moment coronavirus is gone, people will start working hard in order to bring this world back to the normal. The normal is the classical one. And again, we will fail, because after a while, there will be another pandemic, or there will be another financial crisis, or there will be other risks that will become real, and they will again have quantum, and probably will have much bigger scale. So it's the time for us to start learning that the world is changing, and in order to fight pandemic or the financial crisis or any other risk of this world, we have to start changing the way we live, because the world is changing. If you would say that somewhere in Ukraine 3 years ago, here you were monitoring Ukraine, 5 years ago, could have you predicted that today's president will be elected as president? A gentleman who was acting as an actor and so on and so forth. Or 5 years, 3 years, before President Trump was elected. Could you predict that? Even a year ago, year and a half, people didn't believe that. But it's changing fast, it's unpredictable, it looks unpredictable if you look at the issue from the point of view of a classical change. But if you start thinking about this world as a quantum world, then you'll find logical ways of explaining things, predicting them, of course with a specific probability, because quantum behavior, like in physics, is, you are not speaking about deterministic, or you are not speaking about particles moving from one spot to another, crossing a specific curve. You are speaking about the probability of specific event or a particle being in different parts of time and space with specific probability. But you can be more sort of ready to predict what's going to happen than if you look at the things from the point of view of classical. This is something that I've been thinking for many years, and I was lucky that the last 2.5 years I have a co-author or a good partner with him. We have written the first book, which is with the publisher, but we have stopped it because the classical way of presenting a book is to go and to make presentation, to sign the book, and so on and so forth. But unfortunately, even my publisher was not ready to the new world, making it all on the virtual side. So that gave me some opportunity to start writing with the same author that I value very highly, the second one, and developing it further, the idea. Now, did I manage to give you the sense of what I'm talking about? And the main subject is that this is a changing world. It's going to change much more faster than we even imagine. And we have to be ready to do that. And if we will start thinking, going back to the way we were before this coronavirus, then we'll be wasting time. It will come again as this virus, that virus, any other virus. It could be a virus on the World Wide Web. It could be a virus and a global hacking, then everything will stop. And it will be we have to start rethinking how this world is going to be run and take the lessons of that. In order to understand, we have to understand that it's not about the virus at all. Virus is something dramatic, virus is something tragic. It has already taken thousands and thousands of lives. Virus is something that any government, including my government, has to fight today, but the conclusion is that if we are only focusing as a virus and as just an accident that has happened now, it will never come back, then we are mistaken. This is the new world that we are going to live, and we have to be ready to face this world and to be ready for others. Well, imagine before the virus, if President of the United States would have been announcing to the world that he is going to invest $1 trillion into healthcare or the economy of the United States. What would have been the reaction of people worldwide? Starting from the stock market, because this is a huge amount of money eventually going into the industry and so on. Or many other presidents or the countries or the prime ministers who are running their economy, and they have to inject money in order to prevent the virus. But injecting all of that money is going to change many things, including how we run our free market, how we are running the stock exchange, how the companies will be valued, because that amount of money into the new stock exchange. I'm picking up an idea and going with you forward. This is going to change dramatically even many of our values, and how we eventually were going to solve this. We have all of the means, the governments have all of the means in order to do much more predictable. Even if you forget about the theory of quantum politics, you will start utilizing or managing your management of the country with the qualities or the tools of quantum world without even realizing or thinking of that what you are doing is quantum, not classical. So what is 10 billion people? is 10 billion, the 10 billion individual units. Okay, each of that unit today is carrying something that basically transmits very valuable information. We live that world. A lot of companies know what is our taste. They do the advertising, the chocolates that we like, or the tourism or the travel that we like, and so on and so on. So the companies are a bit further than maybe the governments are. But information is there. And what is 10 billion? It's nothing for a supercomputer or a computer that is based on quantum computing with an artificial intelligence. So eventually you can model the whole population of the world. But let's take a much more smaller area. A city like Yerevan, 1 million or 1.5 million. And what is that? That's nothing. If anybody is carrying a telephone with all of that information inside the mobile phone or on an electronic watch, not a mechanical that I carry, then on the spot, real time, the government can know eventually, and if you are a very organized society like in China, you'll get the full information about your temperature, about your health, about how much money you have, what is that you like to eat, how many children you have, how are your relations, your surrounding people that you meet every day. That's for the computing system, and artificial intelligence eventually is nothing to absorb and to manage that sort of information. That means we'll be living in an environment or in a society where the governments will have huge amount of information about people. Will that information be also available for the opposition politicians or not? Or the government can indirectly lead you somewhere, giving you indirectly an advice that you shouldn't like this chocolate, the other chocolate is better. Well, that's, I'm trying to be very polite. You shouldn't like this is a wrong behavior, and this one is better. So what sort of world society we're heading with the changes that they are coming, with the huge power, and with the understanding that we are individuals carrying information that will be available, manageable, analyzed, and our relations are very, very fast and quick. And then you can go even further than that. You can go even further than that, because then it comes to a simple question: in this new quantum world, what will look like the free will of an individual, of the particle, of a human being? Because that will could be managed, designed, or guided by an external magnetic field or electric field. So you'll start moving towards something because the magnetic field is there. So because somebody or a government has decided to move you, all of you somewhere, and if you are very well organized, or a society that everybody is a specific similar particle, so has the same behavior, the same electric charge, and you put a magnetic field, all of these particles will move in the same direction. If you are a complex society, there are particles that will be no charge, no electric charge. There'll be some positive, some negative. So you put the magnetic field, majority of particles will move there, but there'll be particles that will be moving the other direction in the society. Or there will be some ones that will not be affected by your magnetic field because they don't have a charge. That's this comparison, of course, is artificial, but I want just to have the feeling that we're not particles, of course, we're much more complex, and in reality, every particle is complex as well, as far as we know. But the reality is, we're entering a world that external fields designed can guide you, and you will not feel it maybe. So the question is, where is your free thought or free decision-making power? Where is that? Of course, pandemics, we have to fight it. And it reminds us also that in many ways we are traveling too far, too many. Probably we can manage this world, our business, be that political business or other businesses, maybe without traveling. I think every day I look from my window, there is a beautiful painting here behind me. This is not my office or usual office. It's another room that I use in the presidential palace. But there's a beautiful painting there of Mount Ararat, the biblical Mount Ararat, which is the symbol of my nation, a place that people landed and animals, creatures landed together with Noah after the flood global. So is this a new flood happening to us? Is this the only flood that will be happening to us? And will we find as humans the next Mount Ararat to land on it and to restart our society? That's a big question. But one thing is clear, that every morning when I go to the top floor of my house, I look at Mount Ararat, I can see it much more clear, because the air in Yerevan has become much better, 2-3 times better than it was before. Why? People don't drive cars, they are mostly sitting at home, or even they drive when it's necessity there. So this very sensitive, tragic event is also giving us a message that we can manage our lives with much less damage to the nature. Let's rethink about it. So the message of this tragedy to us humans is that why don't we think about resetting ourselves? Because if we don't do it, the world is changing, everything is going to change. Do you want to call it a new world, faster world, whatever name you will give it to this new world, it's not going to be the same as it was before. Not before the coronavirus, but before, let's say, 30, 40 years. So we better recognize that we're living in a new world. All of our activities, be that risks, be that politics, the way we run business, how we manage our relations with the nature, have to be changed. If we don't change it, we're going to hit another pandemic, this or that form. So the message is clear. We have to think it properly and really. I'm sorry, Thierry, I think I didn't answer probably some of your questions that you asked me, but in 10-15 minutes to explain what I mean, not through mathematical formulas that I am trying to develop a mathematical base of the quantum world, but in the just simple ideas, it's still difficult. What I speak I speak a lot to world leaders, and of course in these days, it's not about philosophy, it's not about the future of the world, because everybody has a huge task, and to fight for the health of the people of respected nations, and it's an exchange of ideas, what went wrong and what was right. I think I have to learn what went wrong, let's say in Italy, or what was a bit right somewhere when pandemic is much more slower, and to come to the right conclusion, and of course to start a new collaboration and focus on the things that we can do after the coronavirus, probably invest more on healthcare, and also a very important issue, which is food security, because Armenia is a landlocked country. A lot of our countries with the new coronavirus situation will start more closing down. We have seen even in Europe, we have seen a lot of borders being closed or made it not as transparent as before. We have seen the financial borders are not transparent and expected results or the support is not there. So the world is going to be changing. Europe is going to be changing, United States, Eurasia is going to change, Armenia is going to change. So this is what I discuss with my colleagues, presidents of different countries. Now, about the government of Armenia, there is a young government of Armenia, and I'm a president of a parliamentary republic, so I don't interfere in executive power. That means that I cannot tell them do this or that, but I can give an advice, which is I'm trying to do to them, and basically using the power of word rather than power of execution. And hopefully we will do better. And probably I'll stop here, Thierry, because I think I have mismanaged my time.
Not at all, not at all. Well, Mr. President, we're so very grateful for your insights and the richness of your argument. We have 30 minutes left, and we have about 80 questions. So I'm going to do my very best to aggregate them by themes, and we'll go down the list as they come. So maybe the first is around global governance and leadership. Sach, would you like to elaborate a bit on your question? Sach and Daria.
Thanks, Thierry, and Mr. President. It's an honor to meet you. I will practice 100% of my Armenian with you. Barev, kefet.
Barev, laves, ishpeses. Yeah, your answer should be lavem. I'm good.
Lavem, thank you. I've just increased my Armenian knowledge by 100%. So my quick question was you know, this is clearly a global problem. I wanted to bring this back to the present situation as opposed to, I would say, the quantum thinking that you were alluding to. This is clearly a global problem that requires a coordinated global solution. Yet, you know, what we are seeing is, you know, countries completely fending for themselves. You know, I mean, all the European countries, while they are notionally part of the EU or part of Schengen, are doing their own thing. You're even going to the extreme. You're even seeing extremes where countries are competing against each other for, you know, for medical resources. When you have a situation like this that requires global leadership, where is that leadership going to come from? I mean, the traditional player that people have looked to, you know, is the US. Clearly is not going to play that role. What solution do you foresee, or what possibilities do you see?
Fine. Okay, I'll try to be short. I think in order to find what form of a solution are we going to expect to at this moment of time, we have global solutions starting from United Nations, the superpowers, European Union, many other organizations that were created, international organizations, pacts, and so on and so forth, that were created in order to be there to improve life, but also to face the risks. Before suggesting any other solution, we have to do a valuation that during this crisis, international institutions, how did they work? Are we satisfied with their work? So I think we should give them a chance in order to prove that they are capable of finding solutions in these sort of critical times, instead of just suggesting, they are not doing their job, we should do that. It's the same story in each country and government. The government is trying to do hard. Some governments were right in order to start measures earlier, the other ones were late. Some governments have this sort of a solution, the others have the other. But it's not the time to start doing general evaluation and analyze the experience, because we are just at the beginning or in the middle of this horrible experience. So I think I would not come with an idea that we have to change this or that this institution doesn't work or the other one doesn't, or the other one works better. No, it's not the right time of doing this valuation. The time will come, but we unfortunately have to go through this painful experience. In order not to be very sort of a negative to your question, I do have my thoughts what should be done. I'll just give you one of them, one of many ideas that I have, and an idea that I've started implementing or started pushing it before the coronavirus started, that we should create, in this world there are many organizations, basically starting G7, G8, G20, and regional powers or powers that are with us or without us and so on. But everything was about those who are powerful. So I had an idea, and I shared it with several leaders of this world, be that from Asia, from Europe, and from Africa and Middle East as well, that it's the time probably we start sort of a club of small and successful countries. A club where the small countries come together and share with each other where are the sources of their success and where they are facing common failures and what is that they can globally. This is not an alliance, this is not a new organization. And I envisage that as a club where we come together, small ones. Well, you can have a definition of what is small and you can have a definition of what is successful. I have my own. And I've shared with that presidents and prime minister of successful countries, and they were absolutely interested in what this idea. So this world should be much more complex rather than just a world run by 1 power, 2 power, or 5 powers, or 7 powers, or 20 powers. This should be a world where even the small can be not only beautiful in some cases, but also successful, and they should have their voice as well. Maybe in a form of a club, or maybe in a different form. This is just one simple suggestion that I hope after the coronavirus, I push it further down. I have other ideas, but I said everything, it's its own time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have a lot of questions on the geopolitical consequences of the crisis. And maybe I'd like to ask Jérôme David. Jérôme, you are based in Singapore, so you have a particular perspective, and your question is also broader in terms of personal freedom and the possible domination of Asia. Jérôme, are you still with us? Jérôme David?
Good evening. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Yes.
Hello, Mr. President. Thank you for your insight. It was very, very interesting. Yeah, I'm a European living in Singapore, and I've been watching the Asian response to the virus and also what's going on in the West. And the question that I have is whether we see an acceleration of the transition to domination of Asia in the world geopolitical area, and a progressive diminution of the Western organized world and the Bretton Woods system.
Well, again, I'll try to be short here. The answer to your question is that we really have to start seriously thinking and reevaluating the world after the coronavirus, the new world that we are entering, because the coronavirus has just opened all of that, a lot of our mistakes and mismanagements and so on and so forth. Do we like it or not, in this new world that is a quantum world, we have to start doing from scratch even basic ideas and values. And we have to prove that Western values of, well, I call it Western because of the West, because of Greece or something else, or whatever you like to say, and Britain or something. But the values of democracy and freedom, they have to be relooked in this new world as well. Because the way you exercise today to democracy is the classical way you do exercise democracy. I mean, you go to 10, 20, 30 years ago, you used to go to ballot box every 5 years, exercise your freedom, your right of democratic democratic choice. You vote for it, and you give a carte blanche to the government to run the country for the next 5 years. Today, do we like it or not, it's a daily democracy, because through the Facebook, through the other units, basically, those who are voting, they're expressing their ideas, their feelings daily. It's a democracy which is run daily, not every 5 years. And that's also a very vulnerable one, because you can manipulate that through false information, false or fake news, and many other things. So this world is changing. And we have to rethink and prove once again that our values, you call it Western values, starting from basic ones up to how we run our economy, we have to rediscover them for the new world. Because if we don't do that, if you have a society like say country X, which is quite totalitarian, and then in that country X, it's much more easier to exercise and to get some sort of a form of a success for a simple reason, because the values of the society, they are not changing. And what is changing is the methods or the tools of managing it. While in the democratic states, you have this complexity of ideas, the complexity of particles with different charges, masses, and so on and so forth. And you have to rediscover how our basic values and the way we run the business is going to work. Because nobody is asking questions. I'm kind of going back to by inertia, I told you about investing in or throwing into the economy $1 trillion or 2 or 3. But it is going to change the whole ideology or the whole way that the stock market is working, or the whole way of natural way of valuing companies in this world. So the share prices has gone down. Now you end up pumping into economy billions, and it's not only in the United States, it's in many countries. What is going to happen, because that huge amount of cash will end up in the economy. Eventually, the share price will start going up. But is that a natural way of developing our free market economy or other things? I am not saying yes or not. I'm saying there are questions from basic democratic values up to the way we run economy. And we better ask the question and rethink our world, otherwise we'll be late. Those countries that are more rigid structure will benefit. Definitely, they will benefit economically. They will benefit through the way they are managing the country. They will show better results of fighting, for example, the same pandemics or global risks than the others. But is that model the best one? And what are the other values that we had for many years, let's say, in the free world? So it's the time that we look at all of these values seriously and design and start thinking how we are going to, and rethink every and each value. I took just one of them, democracy, the way we run it, human rights, the way we run it. In this new world that you look at, if I go in and Google your name in the web, I'll find probably you are nice, you look a very nice man to me. Video. I'll find probably 80% nice things about you, but I'll definitely find 20% rubbish. And so sort of dramatic rubbish, I'll be afraid probably to meet you personally. And this is the information that is globally on the net. A lot of our institutions, starting those who are fighting for human rights up to those who are running our economic or banking or financial, are looking at that same information. How much of it is reliable? Because you can make zero, you can make it infinity, and you can the real infinity into zero. This is the new world that we live. If we don't understand the game change and look at this, the new world, which is the quantum world, we will mismanage it. Thank you. I don't know, did I answer your question or not? Yes, Thierry.
You certainly did. Thank you, Mr. President. Forgive me if I don't do justice to all the questions because there are so many coming. Elena Karastelieva, I think there is an interesting grouping of questions around the issues that you raised initially regarding resilience and complexity and quantum behavior. Would you like to intervene, Elena?
Hello, and thank you very much, Mr. President. I have thousands of questions, but I have to reduce it to one. Quantum world.
I'm trying to find you.
Yes, please. We can continue our conversation.
I found you, yes.
Oh, hello. Hi. Hi. So it's about quantum world and how different the quantum world actually is from the world of complexity. Because obviously in the world of complexity, this is what we are working on, is that everything is unpredictable. It's all about emergence, as you clearly mentioned. And it is very difficult to control as well, in a sense of what is emergent. It's about non-linearity. So we live in a complex world, clearly. And that's what all this crisis and adversity and everything that is emergent around us clearly indicates. So how do we manage this world? Because clearly we can't, as one of the speakers I think already referred to, we can't manage it from global governance anymore, because all these global solutions, they're very, very difficult to tailor to to problems that we have to deal on the ground. So from your point of view, how can we manage this world better, especially that it is becoming more complex, more unpredictable, and less controllable. And where resilience is there.
Okay. Well, it's your complex question about the complexity of the world is really a complex one. So in order to not complicate and make even more complex your life, I'll take you back to how it worked in historically 100 years ago in physics. What happened around 100 years ago, or more than 100 years, the physicists found that the way they were using the ideas or the laws of nature that were absolute, everybody, whatever started from Isaac Newton and coming up to Maxwell and others were like words written in a Bible. But then they started finding that the world has become complex. There are things that they couldn't explain. And the more they were looking at this phenomena here and there, be that large scale or small scale, they were getting lost. So the words that they were using at that time, that the world, natural world, has become complex. We don't understand it because we were trying to use the ideas of classical physics and we don't understand it. And they were, of course, coming up with phenomenal ideas. I mean, absolutely brilliant, but didn't have any basically trying to use the classical physics in order to explain something was never classic at all. Then in one day, this smog disappeared when people came. I mean, there were some people who started that, wait a minute, the way our logic is working and things that we thought that were logical, it doesn't work at all. Let's go and change our logic, how we look at it. And these were geniuses like Albert Einstein or Paul Dirac, the fathers of Heisenberg and others, basically people who were the creators of quantum physics. But this was not about physics. This was about how you look at simple philosophical ideas. What is the beginning and what's the end? What's the reason and what's the consequence? How they are connected to each other. They changed completely the logic of looking at phenomena. The moment you change your logic, then it became absolutely clear and there were no questions. That thing which was formulated as quantum physics was explaining many things. With not exactly the way that you were expecting with certainty, but with probability. But everything was so clear that until today we are using it, discovering new particles, going even deeper inside into the structure of the particles. So the answer to your question is the same. What's the difference between complexity of this world and quantum? The complexity is the recognition of the problem and looking at it with classical eyes and not finding a solution. The quantum world, and when you are trying to find changing your logic and your approach. This is what I am trying to advocate. It's not saying that, yes, the world is complex. Yes, I agree. But it's complex because we're looking at it classically and trying to find solutions using the wrong logic. The difference between complexity and quantum politics is clear. Quantum politics is probably the target that I want all of us to go there to find the solution rather than just to announce the problem. Again, I don't know, did I answer your question or not?
You certainly did. Thank you, Mr. President. We have many questions around the younger generation and how to prepare them to act in a quantum world. Tessa Melkonian, would you like to intervene? And Tessa?
Oui. Yes, thank you, Mr. President, for this very interesting analysis. I was wondering how we could prepare the young generation to act the most wisely way possible in this quantum world, unpredictable and controllable, with many emergence around the world. So I'm really want to know how you see the way we can prepare them for this future.
Yeah, a very important question. Very important question. Although I don't see you, Tessa, but I recognize your family name.
Yeah.
It has something. Now I see you, Tessa. Hi.
Hi, Mr. President.
Yeah. Well, I think how we have to prepare our next generation. I think the first thing that we have to do is start listening to them before we advise them or before we give them the guidance. First of all, we have to understand what is this guidance is going to be about. The worst thing in this world is giving something a guidance or an advice when you really don't understand the problem. There's only one way that you can teach someone something useful, and it doesn't matter how complex is the issue. That's my personal experience. Well, probably if there are no physicists here, everybody thinks that theory of relativity is a very complex thing, or quantum physics is very, very, very complex thing. That's absolutely right. But on the other side, if you really understand this, it becomes easy. And there are geniuses like that have written books that you can just read and enjoy and understand the very complex things of the nature, like Stephen Hawking or indeed Richard Feynman. I mean, you can read, if you are not even a physicist, you know basic mathematics, you can read Feynman and you will enjoy it and understand a lot. So before guiding them, we have to understand what are we guiding on. If we don't know where to go, if we're blind, how we're going to show them the way? If we are like in the Indian old story about the seven blind and the elephant, we're touching different parts of the elephant and declaring that, this is a column or this is a tube. In reality, it's an elephant. If we don't see the elephant, we cannot guide them, number one. Number two, because they are young, they are much more freer for a new logic. For them, it's much more easier because many things in this new life, for them are natural. So I would say, first, listen to them, understand, secondly, what's happening in the world. And when we are clear, we really understand, it will be so easy to explain to them. Because it's like in natural sciences. If you don't understand, if you're a professor, you don't really understand your subject, you will make the lecture a nightmare. Because you will say all the nice words, but there will not be substance to it. But if you really understand, my real experience is that if there is someone of an age of 14, 15, young, talented person with a logic, with basic knowledge of mathematics, I can explain them, for example, a theory of relativity or some basic quantum mechanics, because it's complex, but it's also easy. First, we have to understand, then explain. Don't even try to explain something which you don't understand. You'll make it worse. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have just about 7 minutes to go. I know you are exceedingly busy, so we'll try to finish on time. There are many people asking me to pass the mic to Franklin Sarkissian. And Franklin, you have a question that has been asked by many, many people. Would you like to make your point, Franklin?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. President. That was very enlightening. I was wondering if you think this will reinforce our concern about the loss of biodiversity and climate change, which are far away and invisible threats, but the impact will be measurable even more than coronavirus. Do you think this will change the perception of those threats? Thank you.
Well, I think I touched it with my notion that every morning when I'm looking at Mount Ararat, I see it much more clear. In fact, I can see many details of that mountain that I couldn't see before. So the message is whatever we are doing in excess, in many ways is not probably necessary. Well, I've read some articles that even the ozone layer has changed during this a couple of weeks of self-isolation of individuals. Maybe that's something that is true, or maybe it's not true. It's also clear that these messages that we get is not only about our behavior, what we are burning in order to get energy, and how we are, what are we doing in order to have more and more cars, for what purpose We have lost the common sense in our movement. We were so successful, we were so powerful that we thought that we are gods. But coronavirus as a global pandemic came and basically told us that we're not gods at all. We're too far, and we looked, in many cases, we looked like children that have lost where to go. So the message is clear. In this world, if we want to fight pandemics, we have to look for a world which is much more cleaner. And it's better that we spend our billions of dollars today in making our industry much more cleaner than fighting the consequences of that. It's very important that we invest in the future, not only in the health, but heavily in science and technology that can predict the next way. First of all, mathematically to model it, and it's not going difficult because even today there are simplified versions of mathematical models, how a pandemic can develop and go forward. With the 10 billion of people worldwide, with all boundary conditions more or less known, we can model that, up to investing heavily in biology, and also focusing on biodiversity and new forms of energy that we can create. But be very careful. I mean, this is a lesson that we have to learn. I mean, producing biofuel by cutting a jungle is not the way forward. And we have come to a place where we can really create enough energy and use much less than we were using because of the nanotechnology and everything in order to be self-sufficient in this new world. And then the last thing is, one of the big problems that we are going to face tomorrow, I mentioned that, is food security. And food security here for different countries is the amount of the food that is going to be coming and the quality of that food. Very important, quality of that food. Because that food which doesn't have the right quality, that has too much of, let's say, not safe, for example, genetically modified and unpredictable behavior, if it's not analyzed hundreds and thousands of times before we eat it, or if it's not something that is unknown there, could be dangerous, and they will be forced to spend again and again billions and billions to recover the damage of. Eventually, how the coronavirus started, it looks like it starts with a simple merger of human and animal behavior. I think we don't know much yet, and we have to start learning more how do we have to behave, both less damaging to the nature, but also less damaging our body. We think that we know a lot about the universe, but there's a huge universe inside us, and we know so little about our bodies. I mean, it's amazing. In this world, every country is suffering from not having enough ventilators. We are producing these rockets, quantum computers, but simple ventilator that probably every country can produce in this world. We have never thought about having enough of them to protect the lives of the people. Well, it's a big subject, your question, but what I want to say is again, this is a message for us who have to really think about it. And I'm, as an individual, if hopefully sooner and sooner rather than later we will overcome this pandemic, and if we forget about what we have gone through, then it's going to be a huge shame. And then all of you, and together with me, we have to shout about it. Let's change it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. President, thank you very much. 2-3 minutes left. Can we end with a quick question from Philippe Bourguignon, and then Yochai to end on a note of optimism, hopefully. Philippe.
Yeah.
Well, unmute, okay. How are you, Mr. President?
I'm very well, Philippe. Where are you? I don't see you.
You don't see me?
I saw you,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, I am. I am in a...
What is there behind you? It's like a supermarket.
No. It's a place I created with my daughter, which was supposed to open 2 weeks ago. So unfortunately, it didn't open. But anyway,
Okay,
it's a place to help people communicate. Anyway, so you mentioned in one of your answers that we were flying blind. And that's what I'm talking about every day with the founders and CEOs of the company we invested in. Because flying blind is an equation in which the present is very complex, we know that, and the future is not what it used to be, will be different. And it's flying blind is also knowing in real time where you are without knowing exactly where you're headed. Do you have any tips on how to manage this?
With the CEOs of the companies? I mean, how to manage with the CEOs or with you? There are two different categories.
With all of us. I mean, what's disturbing is this, again, I think we know where we are, but we don't know where we're headed. And therefore, it's very hard to make the best decisions when you have used to kind of extrapolate the past to understand where you are going.
Yeah. Well, I think your question is exactly reflecting what I was speaking about. You know where you are used to know where you are going ahead, and you used to believe that that's the right track to go, and you were going there. Now we are in a situation, we know where we are, but the world has become complex. You can go to the left, you can go to the right, but because the parameters of complexity are so many and unpredictable, each of them has a specific probability to be right or wrong, or specific probability. So your whole picture has become very, very complex. Very complex. If it's a company, I mean, if it's a company, it's pretty simple, because you have to look at the tendencies of the market. If it's a public company, you know where it's going to go, where the markets are going to go, more or less. You can predict that and you can behave accordingly. But it's the time, I think, for a very creative thinking, where we will be not tomorrow, where the share price will be buying a biological company, biochemical company, or health company, because the shares will jump up, or to do the valuation because Russia and Saudis are speaking, so the price of oil will go higher or lower because there is less consumption, or the consumption will come up. That's pretty easy, but where to invest money on a long term, that's a complex thing. But to be honest, I would like to say that I am, to finish on the positive note, okay, Thierry, I'm happy that we are on a crossroad, that we can ask questions. It reminds me, because the words would have been that we are not questioning many things. I do remember the year before the financial crisis when I was in Davos. You were already not there. Am I right, Thierry? I don't hear you. But...
No, I was in Davos last year. That was my last Davos.
Okay. Do you remember that Davos, everybody was saying that everything is fine?
Absolutely.
Exactly. And what happened? Something predictable, but also quantum on its behavior. It was one of the first signs that we had not a classical behavior, but a chain reaction that started with the real estate market in a very big country, and that started spreading like a chain reaction worldwide. Anybody at that Davos saying that something is going to happen bad, or what our predictions are, could be, there's a possibility that will be wrong, could have been said as a heretic, because the world was so perfect and nice. And I think that I do remember with Graham Allison, we had this feeling that something is wrong in the air, but whenever we were speaking, we were told, don't ask that questions, more or less, okay? Now I'm happy that through this discussion, we are questioning many things, because that's the only way to truth. I don't carry the truth. I have just my own life experience, and I'm trying to share it with people the way I see it. Each of you have your own solution. So the best thing and the positive thing in this tragic world today, because we're losing human lives, is to ask a question and to find a solution together. And that's the positive note that I want to bring to this discussion. That I'm so happy that I see so many intelligent faces that have so many question marks in their heads, and they want to find a solution. So I'm sure we'll find the solution, because the solution is there.
Mr. President, thank you so very much for your time. It was wonderful to have you with us. I do apologize to many of you who had more questions, who had about 60 more questions, but hopefully we'll be able to pursue the conversation in Dilijan and Yerevan in October, I hope.
In October, yes. Mr. President, thank you also.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody. And I'm sorry that I was not very specific, because when you have only 1 hour to speak about general things. Maybe, Thierry, we can have, if anybody will be interested on more specific questions or specific answers that I've found in my life, I'll be happy to share it with you. But look at this one as an introduction.
Wonderful.
Thank you, everybody.
Very generous of you. Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Mr. President. Bye-bye. Thank you for your time.